loss, or betrayal? Do you ever dream of the day when the silent pain inside will disappear? The pain you hide behind a straight face, behind the words, "I'm fine." Maybe you're tired of trying to please everyone, tired of putting on a tough, strong face every day, when what you really want is a break, a moment of vulnerability without having to pay the price. If that's true for you, then sit back and take a deep breath. Not everyone has the courage to admit this. Not everyone has the courage to say that they're exhausted from living as if nothing can touch them. But I'll tell you what no one else has ever said to you. As long as you try to avoid pain, it will still control you. As long as you're busy hiding it, pretending not to see it, building up defenses, you're a hostage to what's happening outside, to what other people say, to what they do that disappoints you, to what they say that makes you invisible. And that's not weakness. That's reality. The only difference is that some people are better at hiding it than others. Carl Jung once said, "We are not what happens to us, but what we choose to become." There, in that quote, is the beginning of real change. You don't have to be a block of ice. You don't have to be cold, indifferent, or pretending not to care. What you need to do is start looking inside, bringing light into the dark corners you've been avoiding. Because true strength doesn't come from not feeling pain. Strength comes from being able to face yourself even when you're bleeding. When you sit in the middle of your brokenness and still know who you are. If you're listening, it's no accident. This is for you, someone who's all too familiar with feeling emotionally vulnerable, like someone else has some power over you that you can't control. I don't promise you it'll be easy, but I promise to be honest. And I'm going to show you a truth that may hurt, but for the first time, that pain won't be a prison. It will be the beginning of your liberation. So let's start here. Let go of everything you thought you were supposed to be. Let go and be honest. Not with me, but with yourself. We're about to embark on a deeper journey where pain isn't your enemy, but an invitation to truly know yourself. This isn't a video for you to watch for fun. This is your first encounter with the truth you've been avoiding for so long. And if you're brave enough to take the next step, it will change the way you see things. You think what hurts you is what someone else did. A careless word, a long silence, an act of betrayal. You believe that if that person hadn't left, if they hadn't said those words, if they had acted differently, you wouldn't be hurting so much. But the truth is, no one can hurt you that much if you don't already have a wound inside of you. What hurts you isn't what someone else did. It's how those actions bring up things you haven't faced in yourself. That's the first truth, and perhaps the hardest to accept. You hurt because something inside you hasn't healed. You hurt not because they abandoned you, but because you were abandoned. You hurt not because they don't see you, but because you haven't dared to look straight at yourself for a long time. Every time you're rejected, ignored, or betrayed, old scars are exposed. And as long as you let others define your worth, you're stuck in a cycle of hurt. Carl Jung called this the principle of reflection. What you feel from the outside world is actually a reflection of your inner self. Others don't really have the right to hurt you. They just accidentally touch the unhealed wound that you've always tried to hide. That's why some people go through terrible losses and still stay calm, while you can collapse because of a careless sentence. It's not because you're weaker, because somewhere inside, you have never touched yourself. And the most painful thing is when you still believe that you can control this. You think that if you were kinder, smarter, more understanding, then others would not hurt you. You always try to be loved, to be recognized, so that no one has a reason to hurt you. But control is an illusion. There is no formula that guarantees you will not be hurt. There is no way of living perfect enough to be immune to emotions. And when you try to control too much, you are more likely to fall. Because you live in constant tension, always trying to predict what someone will do, what they will say. You do not live. You are on guard. Freedom does not lie in controlling others or circumstances. Freedom begins when you understand that pain can only break you if it finds a place to cling to you. When you are full of unfinished stories inside, everything outside can evoke. But when you have faced it, understood it, accepted it, nothing can touch your core anymore. Others may disappoint you, but they no longer have the right to determine your worth. This is where the real journey begins, not by changing the world, but by looking inside yourself. Ask yourself directly, why did that word hurt so much? Why did that silence break me? Why did I react so strongly that I couldn't control it? And the answer, always, lies within you. Not because you are inferior, but because there are parts of you that have never been healed. Maybe the child who was ignored, the person who lacked love during the most important years, the person who always tried so hard to be recognized, but was never seen. Those parts do not disappear with time. They just recede into the unconscious and control how you feel, think, and react every day. Carl Jung said that the unconscious is not something you can ignore. If you are not conscious of it, it will continue to control you, and you will call it fate. You will think that you are being hurt by others. But in reality, you are repeating a cycle, waiting for someone to fix you, then being disappointed, then being hurt, then closing yourself off, then repeating. To end that cycle, you cannot continue to wait for others to change. You must be the one to change, not by becoming more rigid, but by understanding. Understanding where the pain comes from. Understanding what you have believed about yourself that is false. Understanding that all external pain is just a signal, an invitation for you to turn inward and face it. When you do that, nothing outside of you can break you. You no longer need to defend yourself. You no longer need to cover your ears, cover your eyes, or run away. Because you know, it all starts and ends with you. And that's when you truly begin to live. No longer a person driven by your emotions, but someone who holds the key to freeing yourself from the invisible loop that has held you back for so long. In the next section, we'll go even deeper into the most dangerous illusion of all, the belief that you can control everything to avoid suffering. It's time to expose it. You've spent your life trying to control everything. Your emotions, the actions of others, the outcomes of your relationships, the attitudes of your loved ones, the reactions of the world around you. You believe that if you're good enough, understanding enough, trying hard enough, everything will work out and no one will be able to hurt you. But the truth is, none of it is really in your control. And it is the belief that you can control that hurts you the most. You used to think that if you were nice enough, people wouldn't leave you. If you spoke well enough, people wouldn't hurt you. If you suppressed negative emotions, they would go away. If you calculated carefully enough, you wouldn't fail. But then you realized that no matter how hard you tried, people would still misunderstand you. There would still be moments that didn't go your way. There would still be pain, no matter how you tried to avoid it. It's not your fault. It's the nature of life. Life doesn't follow your plan. It doesn't work the way you imagined it would. And you can't control what's out of your control. But you try anyway. And that's why you're tired. Not because you're weak, but because you're fighting something you can't win. Reality. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist will continue to exist." The more you try to control, the more you try to avoid pain, the more you create the ideal environment for it to come back stronger. Because you are not truly living, you are defending. You are living as an inner guard, always ready to close the door if it sees danger. But living like that, no one can enter, and you will never be truly at peace. There is a simple but unacceptable truth. You cannot control other people. You cannot control their feelings. You cannot control what they think of you. You cannot control who will leave and who will stay. And the more you cling to that desire to control, the more you become a slave to your own emotions. Why? Because everything that goes wrong will immediately be labeled as a meaning. I am not good enough. I am wrong somewhere. I need to try harder. And so you lose the ability to distinguish between real emotions and reactions from old trauma. You get caught in a cycle. Fear of loss, so you control. Unable to control, so you hurt. When it hurts, you want to control it even more, so you don't hurt anymore. The truth is, you don't need control to be safe. You need awareness. You need to know what's triggering you, where that emotion comes from, what beliefs are driving your reactions. When you have awareness, you don't need to control others, because you understand yourself. When you understand yourself, you no longer expect the world to change to fit you. You change the way you navigate that world. This is a new freedom, a kind of strength that doesn't come from closing yourself off to the world, but from being conscious enough to open up without losing yourself. You know that someone can leave, but you're okay. You know that there may be misunderstandings, but you don't have to prove yourself. You stop controlling the current. You learn to swim in it. And this is the turning point that most people never make. Because giving up control is like letting go of a life preserver that you think is saving you. That life preserver is an illusion, that if you do it right, you won't get hurt. But that life preserver is also the thing that keeps you from really swimming. You never dare to let yourself go into the real flow of life. Accepting that you can't control other people is a courageous act. It doesn't mean giving up. It means stopping trying to control what you can't and starting to focus on the only thing you can change: yourself, your mind, your reactions, your view of yourself. When you do that, you're no longer a victim of life. You're an observer. You see the inner workings of your emotions, and you no longer react on instinct. You choose. You act from awareness. And that's when you begin to truly be free. Next, we'll go deeper, the place where all unconscious reactions come from. Your inner darkness. Your personal unconscious. It's there that the old stories are still silently running your life, and it's time to face them. No more avoiding them. No more pretending. This is an encounter you can't put off any longer. There is a part of you that you don't want to see. A part that you ignore, push away, hide behind polite smiles and kind words. It is where all your unresolved emotions reside. The anger that is repressed, the jealousy that you dare not admit, the sense of failure that you deny, the old wounds that you have never healed. Carl Jung called this place the unconscious, not a meaningless dark place, but a place where you keep all the things that you have never dared to accept within yourself. Have you ever wondered why you get so angry that you are afraid of yourself? Sometimes you say things that hurt others, and then wonder why you acted that way. Sometimes you burst into tears over something that seems so small, a careless word, an unintentional look, and deep down you feel like you have just collapsed. Those reactions do not come from the present. They are triggered by a past that you have never processed, and they lie deeper than any rational thought. The unconscious is not a strange, mysterious thing. It is present every day in the choices you make without knowing why, in the way you are attracted to the same type of person even though you know it will hurt, in the way you keep repeating habits that hurt you, in the feeling that you cannot stop yourself from doing a behavior you hate. That is not weakness. That is the unconscious speaking. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will control your life, and you will call it fate." That is why you feel like your life is a cycle. The same pains keep repeating. The same types of people keep coming back. The same negative emotions keep coming back when you think you have overcome them. Actually, you have not overcome anything. You have only suppressed them. And what is suppressed does not disappear. It just waits for the opportunity to rise up stronger, more suddenly, more out of control. Your shadow is not your enemy. It is the part of you that has been neglected for too long. The fear you dare not name. The anger you once learned to swallow. The voice that was silenced by your parents, society, lovers, and peers. And now, all of those parts are alive. But because you do not recognize them, they live in distorted forms. Depression, anxiety, exhaustion, disorientation, emptiness, and even self-hatred. You cannot change your life if you do not know what is driving you. And you will not know what is driving you if you do not dare to look inside. Look honestly, without justification, without blame, Because only when you face it can you integrate. Only when you acknowledge your shadow can you stop being controlled by it. Jung called this process meeting the shadow. And he believed that facing the shadow was an indispensable step in the journey of spiritual growth. But not everyone dares to do that, because no one likes to see their own dark side. We like to think of ourselves as good people, kind people, people who are in control. But the more we deny our dark side, the more we lose control of our lives. So how do we start? There is no need to immediately dig into every hurt. Start by observing yourself. Every time an intense emotion arises, ask yourself, what inside me is being triggered? Every time you overreact, ask yourself, is this the first time I've felt this way? Or is it a repetition of a familiar feeling? Every time you feel sad, anxious, or not good enough, stop and write down. What voice in your head is talking? Who is it coming from? When did it start? Continuous, non-judgmental observation is the key to unlocking the door to the unconscious. When you look long enough, you will begin to see the patterns, the fear of abandonment, the feeling of unworthiness, the anger at not being recognized, and you will realize they are not who you are. They are the forgotten parts. And if you are brave enough to see them, to hear their voices, then you are no longer a victim. You are a witness. And when you witness, you can choose. Facing the darkness is not a punishment. It is the highest act of love, because you are saying to yourself, I am willing to see the whole of me, the light and the dark, and I accept all of it. When you do that, you are no longer torn between who you want to be and who you really are. You are no longer conflicted between the desire to grow and the unconscious clinging. You begin to live as a whole. That's when the transformation begins. From a habitual reactor, you become a conscious doer. From an emotional observer, you become an emotional observer. From a person who keeps repeating old scripts, you start writing new ones for yourself. Next, we'll delve into an important paradox. The pain you've been avoiding is actually the gateway to freedom. You'll understand why pain, rather than being your enemy, is what brings you back to yourself. And why, only when you step into the pain zone, can you step out with true power. This is the hardest part, but also the most important part of the journey. Don't stop. Keep going. From a young age, you've been taught that pain is something to be avoided, that tears are a sign of weakness, that strong emotions are something to be suppressed. And from that moment on, you learn to run away. Escape sadness with laughter. Escape anger with silence. Escape loneliness with fake relationships. But the more you run, the more pain follows. Because you can't escape it. You just push it inside, and it will dig deeper, expand, and one day burst out in another form. Anxiety, depression, unreasonable anger, or emotional numbness, to the point where you don't know what you're living for. Carl Jung didn't see pain as an enemy. Instead, he saw it as the language of the soul, a warning from within that something needs your attention. He once said, "Depression is a lady in black. If she comes, don't chase her away. Invite her to sit down, have a cup of tea, and listen to what she has to say." That's more than just a beautiful metaphor. It's a profound guide to how we should deal with pain. Not push it away, not impose it, not deny it, but approach it as a messenger. You suffer not because you are weak. You suffer because something inside you is in conflict. Part of you wants to grow, but part of you is afraid of change. Part of you wants freedom, but part of you is afraid of loss. You want to be authentic, but you worry that if others see the real you, they will leave. And it is this silent tug-of-war that causes pain. It does not come from outside. It is the result of an internal war that you have become so accustomed to living with that you no longer recognize it. And like all wars, it exhausts you. You lose sleep. You find yourself angry. You feel sad without knowing why. You repeat behaviors that you don't like. And then you blame yourself. You judge yourself. You throw yourself into a cycle of guilt and shame. But the truth is, there is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. You just haven't learned to listen to that voice inside. And that voice doesn't need to be stifled. It needs to be understood. Healing doesn't start with getting away from the pain. It starts with stepping into it, by accepting that you're in pain, not trying to cheer yourself up, not pretending everything is okay, not rushing to find a solution, just being fully present with your feelings. You may cry, you may gasp in panic, you may shake with fear, but that's your body releasing something that's been holding back for so long. And that doesn't make you weak, it makes you real. The truth is, people who have dealt with deep pain have a special depth to them. They don't fall apart. They don't live superficially. Because they've been broken, and from that brokenness, they've rebuilt themselves. No longer the version that others like, but the real version, without the need to hide or please anyone. They're not cold, but they have inner strength. They are not emotionless, but they no longer let their emotions overwhelm them. They have gone through the darkness, and therefore, they are no longer afraid of it. You can become that person, not by becoming stronger, but by becoming more honest. Honest with yourself, about the things that hurt you, the people who have disappointed you, the memories you have never spoken about. Write them down. Tell them as calmly as you can. Look into them as if you were looking at a memory of someone you love, because you need that tenderness too. When you dare to do this, something strange happens. The pain begins to change. It loses its sharpness. It becomes part of your story, a chapter in your journey of growth. And you begin to see clearly that it is not the pain that weakens you. It is the running away from it that exhausts you. When you step into it, you are no longer a victim. You are an agent. The one who is willing to listen to what his soul has to say. That is the door of liberation. Not liberation from emotions. Liberation from the fear of emotions. When you are no longer afraid of pain, you are free. When you no longer need to protect yourself from yourself, you are powerful. And from that, you do not need to control anyone. You do not need to play any role. You are present, honest, complete. In the next section, we will come to the final step of the journey. No more running, no more resisting, no more confusion. We will explore the deepest state of inner freedom, where you become invulnerable, not because you are not wounded, but because you are no longer identified with that woundedness. This is where consciousness becomes the strongest shield. And you, at last, come home to yourself, full, clear, and unconquerable. When you have gone through the layers of woundedness, faced the darkness, stopped running from yourself, something strange begins to happen. You no longer need to defend yourself. You no longer have to prove anything. Not because you have become perfect, or because life has stopped testing you, but because you have seen through all the masks you have worn, believed to be you. And now you are left with yourself, whole, naked, but not weak, quietly solid. Carl Jung called it individuation, the process of the self becoming who you are, not the self that society wants you to be, not the role you play to be loved, not the image you want to be admired, but you, with all your light and your dark, with all your contradictions, your brokenness, your rough beauty. A person who no longer seeks permission from the outside to exist. A person whose every part of your inner self has been recognized and integrated. And it is that integration that makes you invulnerable. Invulnerability is not feeling anything. It is not being insensitive, indifferent, or cold. On the contrary, the more deeply you live, the more you feel. But the difference is, you are no longer pulled by your emotions. You are no longer swayed by external circumstances. A criticism no longer tears you down. A judgmental look no longer confuses you. An abandonment no longer makes you doubt your worth. Because you know, your worth is not in the eyes of others. It is in the clarity you have inside. And no one can take that away. This is not something you achieve in a day. It is the result of a courageous journey of facing yourself, You have sat with the pain. You have listened to the parts of you that have been abandoned. You have stopped closing your eyes to the truth. And because of that, you no longer need to live on defense. You no longer need to manipulate others to feel safe. You no longer need to please to be loved. True love, now, begins within you. You have become a self-lover, not in the empty sense, but by understanding and accepting your whole self. That acceptance is not resignation. It's a deeper state, knowing that you don't need to change who you are to be worthy. You don't need to be someone else to be accepted. You, as you are enough to be whole. And from that point, you begin to engage the world with an inner stillness. This is true power. A power that doesn't need to be displayed, doesn't need to be spoken out loud, doesn't need to be proven. It's an energy that everyone feels when they're around you, because you're fully present. You don't hide. You don't hide. You don't compromise. But you don't need to impose or control. You just are. And that's enough to make the world adjust to you, instead of the other way around. Jung once said, "The greatest tragedy of life is that we become what others expect of us, instead of what we truly are." But now, you are no longer living the script that others have written for you. You have dropped the mask. You have rejected the role. And while that may be lonely at times, it is a gateway to a new community people who are also living authentically, who are also going deeper into themselves. And those connections are lasting, based not on pretense, but on insight and empathy. The rebirth of consciousness is not just a personal turning point. It changes the entire way you interact with the world. You no longer react unconsciously. You choose to respond consciously. You no longer seek people to please you. You create your own joy from a genuine connection with yourself. You no longer repeat the same hurtful relationships. You build connections from a place of healing. Most importantly, you are no longer afraid of pain, because you have learned that pain does not kill you. Pain only reveals the part of you that needs healing. And you no longer see suffering as an end. You see it as a beginning. Whenever a negative emotion comes, you do not push it away. You invite it in. Sit down. Ask it, "What have you come to teach me this time?" And from there, you continue to grow. Not in the breadth of your achievements, but in the depth of your understanding. The outside world will still challenge you. There will be failures, losses, misunderstandings. But you no longer live in fear, because you know it will all pass. But what remains is you, your consciousness, that solid core that nothing can shake. That is where you are no longer affected by every wave of emotions, because you have learned to live at a deeper level. There is stillness, there is clarity, there is true freedom. When you reach that state, you become untouchable. Not because you are no longer hurt, but because you no longer let hurt define you. You no longer let fear control you. You no longer let the past program you. You act from awareness. You live from truth. And you love life not because it is always easy, but because you know how to be true even when it is full of uncertainty. That is the gift of rebirth. You don't need to change the world. Just change the way you walk in it. And from there, everything begins to change, starting with you.